Okay, so I'm going to show you guys how to log into data service and complete your progress monitoring for RTI. You want to open up a internet browser, Google Chrome or Safari or Firefox, any of them work. And when you do, you're going to type in dataservice.org right up here. It should come to a page that looks like this, where you will input your username and password. For this purpose, I'm going to input my username. Everyone's username should be their first name dot last name. Mine is Mary.Teeter. And then the password that you were assigned or you created. You also want to always make sure that under district, you select Gateway Lab from the list of options. And click Login. Your page will pop up that looks like this, and you want to go to the tab that says iTracker Pro. This is where you're going to track all of your information for your RTI groups. And then you will be at a page that looks like this. There's a lot of different options. Yours may look different than mine depending on what you have access to, but everybody should have a number 2 that says View My Intervention Groups, and you'll click on that. Then you have several options. Your groups should be popped up right here. If your groups are not yet entered, please contact somebody like Amy Sanders as soon as possible so that she can make sure whoever's inputting that information gets it input for you. So the next step that you would take is we're going to start with taking attendance because you have to take attendance every time you have a math group or a reading group with you. So for this one, my reading group, I'm going to take their attendance. And you'll see all of their names that pop up right here. So I have these students in my reading group classes. And then you'll also see the dates that you can select from the drop-down menu. So this first cycle, you want to go to the very first date of 10/3/2016 to 10/7/2016. And that should change right here. 10/3, 10/4, 10/5, 10/6, 10/7. All readings groups meet on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, so that's the only ones that you can click. It won't actually allow you to click on the Tuesdays and Thursdays unless you're in a math group. When you go through, you're just going to typically click full credit, and it'll assign them the 50-minute slot. If a child is absent, if Alea, for example, was absent from your Monday class, you want to enter in 0. If they came 10 minutes late, you would enter in 40. So however long they were actually there. Also, if you do not meet for a period of time, so on Friday 10/7, my class did not meet because we were not in school, you don't enter in anything. Just leave that blank. When you are done, you'll click Save Attendance. And then you'll have to go back in just to make sure that it's saved in 10/3. So if you'll notice, I have all of mine entered in 10/10. We weren't here, but we were here those 2 days. 10/17, entered in 10/31, so on and so forth until you enter in all the way up to the date that your cycle is ending. And that is how you enter attendance. When you are done entering attendance, you can just go to the Return to My Intervention Groups. And you'll take attendance for both your reading and your math groups. The next step is to progress monitor. On Fridays, we have a split period. We typically do reading first and then math. And on those days is when you should be assessing your students to see how much progress they have made over time. So when you want to enter in that data, you'll go to the Progress Monitoring Diagnostic tool. And it'll pop up like this. From there, you'll see all of your children's names. And what you want to do in order to enter in their data is go to the Progress Monitoring button. So if I'm entering in information for Alea, then I would click on this Progress Monitoring button, and this will pop up. So this is let's say I did my assessment, which is on a Fridays, on October 14th. I would click October 14th, and then I would select what type of assessment was used. For this one, for my reading groups, we always use a comprehension assessment, but you can also make sure if you do fluency, there's a fluency one. If you're doing DIBELS, there's DIBELS. They give all the stars and cars options if you're using stars and cars. And they also give stars and cars for specific skills like main idea. For my group, we are using SRA books. I'm just going to do a comprehension assessment. When it goes to assessment grade, you don't want to input the grade that they are in. You want to input the grade that they are working on, your instructional level. So this particular group is working on a fifth grade level, so I'm going to put in 5. And then you'll come down to enter in their score. We like to do all of the scores out of 100%. So it doesn't matter how many questions you give, you want to put in a percentage. So for example, if I give a 10 question assessment and they get 9 correct, I'm going to give them a 90 for 90%. If I give them an assessment that doesn't have as many questions, so let's say I gave them a 5 question assessment and they got 4 correct, then you would enter in 80%. So always remember to enter in the percent that they get out of 100%. In the comments section is where you want to be more specific as to what type of comprehension assessment it is, especially if you are working on those specific skills. So I would say this was a 5th grade assessment, reading comprehension assessment. And it was finding details was the specific skill they were working on. Then I would click save and then add another if I wanted to input my next data. And when you do that, what you'll see is if you keep adding data is it'll start to create a chart that shows you their growth over a period of time, which will help you at the end of each cycle to make your recommendations because you'll be able to see whether that student has met the benchmark that you think they needed to meet in order to move on to the next tier or the next skill. So that's how you enter in data. For math, it would be pretty much similar. You would just select math progress monitoring, and then you would again put in the grade level that they were working on, and you would make sure that you enter in the score out of 100 and explain exactly what they were working on. Mine are working on understanding integers, so when I enter that in, I would write that they were working on understanding integers. You don't have to fill in all of these, it'll just fit into one of these categories. So then the next step, if you go back to your intervention groups, after you progress monitoring, at the end of each cycle, you want to make a recommendation. And when you get to this screen, you'll go to Add. You will go all the way down. You'll see some data from previous years. If you want to look at that, it might help you. But this is where you actually make your recommendation. So you only have a couple of options. You can either continue in their same tier, or you could move them up to a different tier or down to a different tier. Depending on which tier they're in, they'll give you 3 options. And when you do click on one of them, you want to explain kind of why you're keeping them in that tier or moving them up or down. So for example, if I'm continuing her, I might say that I'm continuing her in tier because she had inconsistent progress. Meaning maybe she scored an 80% one time, but then she scored 50s on a couple of other assessments. So her progress was inconsistent. Inadequate progress may mean that she's just not showing enough growth, which could also, she could not meet the minimum attendance, or she could show, if you're moving her up, adequate progress and her benchmark is met, or she's showing adequate progress but her benchmark is not met. But you'll select from those options, and if you notice, you can click more than one. On the recommended target area, this is what you're recommending them to work on for the next cycle. So if you were working on reading fluency and you feel like they've mastered it, maybe you want to move them to a reading comprehension group. But you're actually making a recommendation for their following cycle. And then you would also put in their recommended intervention tool that you would like them to use, which can be a comprehension assessment, fluency, or any of these others assessments. If there is something that is not on here, you can put it in the comments box. Usually what you'll say is what you're recommending them. So I recommend Alea continue with Tier 2 intervention in finding details. She is working on a 5th grade level and needs continued practice in order to master this skill at a higher level. You could also put extra information if a child you feel needs to be moved for alternate reasons. Just make sure you list that in the comment box so that whenever we are recreating the groups or reassigning groups, we know the specifics as to why you would like this child to move up, move down, or stay the same. And then you would just click save. And it's going to tell me I need to click on these, so I'll just click on some of them really quickly. And then it would show that your recommendation was made, and it would show the reason why. And that is how you enter in your data for progress monitoring and how you take attendance and make recommendations. If you have any questions, please reach out to me and I can help as much as I can. Thank you.